mentioned to Sean, I first taught in a university without walls at a place in a prison, which had a lot of them, and it was built in 1802. And as a consequence of my teaching there, I surreptitiously made a film about it, which was on public television and resulted in the prison being closed, which resulted in my going to law school to study prisoners' rights, which resulted in my then teaching carpentry after law school at the height of DSEG of the Boston Public Schools, in which I saw people throwing bricks at babies in buses. And I realized the first day when I had these juvie special ed kids, because it was a 501.4 program, substantially separate program in a substantially separate facility under federal terminology, that those kids were every bit as bright as middle-class kids I had just been in law school with. So the arc of my career since then has been about this question of why are these kids over here and those kids over there. We created High Tech High, and Robert's here, and Melissa's here, others from High Tech High today. We all created it together. But I was asked at another event to give 10 reasons, 10 elements that make a really good school. So I'll read through them very quickly, but basically we have all of our kids are accepted by purely blind lottery, zip code based, non-meritocratic, special ed kids are not segregated from other kids, et cetera, et cetera. We have a college going agenda for all of the kids, and basically, even by subgroup, in the mid-80s% of kids, including special ed kids, graduate from four-year colleges. Okay, 10 ways to define school quality. 1, it's committed to equity and delivers on it. 2, the school works for all students who attend it. 3, it does not mispredict based on socioeconomic status, race, gender, or an overemphasis on standardized test scores who can and who can't do what. 4, students are doing work that has value to them. 5, students have voice and choice in their learning and are creating new knowledge. 6, it's a rich learning environment for the adults who inhabit it. The adults are collaborating and improving through reflective practice and by looking at all kinds of information about what they're doing. 7, it intelligently allocates adult and student time, space, people, and resources. 8, the school's purpose is not just to serve the public, but to create a public. It makes its walls as permeable as possible with the world outside of school, so as not to be a citadel apart from community. 9, innovation in the governance mechanism is an important, but in and of itself insufficient condition. And 10, that schools are healthy and safe. It is a very sacred public trust to be responsible for other people's children. The thing about number 9 about governance models, because we're a charter school, and in the 90s I wasn't really a fan of charter schools because I worried about market segmentation leading to market atomization. And I was on the phone with someone who runs a state charter organization, and he said, well, you know, you're really a charter guy because you have some of the most successful charter schools. I said, I'm not a charter guy. I'm sitting in a chair talking to you right now. I'm not a chair guy, okay? You know, it's like I use chairs, I use charters, okay? All right, so I want to show you some student work really, really quickly. I'm going to show you 3 different pieces, okay? So first, that is our schools. They're in Chula Vista, and Melissa in the corner works in one of those schools, and the mountains behind our schools are Mexico. As one student aptly said, I'm not here legally, they put the border on the other side of me. One of the really interesting things, of all the narratives in the United States, of all the wars and everything that happened, there's no other narrative about what happened other than the fact that this land was absolutely stolen from Mexico in 1850. Okay, Calculus is a very interesting project on art and calculus. We integrate art in so much that we do. Phys Newton, that's when a famous university president came by and said, well, that's really well and good, but what about the standards? So a physics teacher and the math teacher at the end of the year said, oh, the standards. You know, I was there when the word standards was first used. You know, Michelle, do you remember? It was actually Debbie too, and Debbie and I said, how about expectations? They said, what's wrong with standards? They said, well, if you add a few letters to standards, you get standardization, and standardization is the death knell of schooling and innovation. So what they did was, with the kids, the next year, the kids illustrated the California Newtonian physics standards to explain them to younger kids. This whole thing about older to younger, like if any of you have a 2-year-old and you don't understand what they're saying and there's a 4-year-old nearby, ask them, they'll tell you, right? Okay, and then this is a really cool book that they did. Our kids have published about 67 books. Thank you, Lulu. Thank you, Blurb. Costless to us. This was some kids who did something on microeconomic things like free riding, warm glow preferences, opportunity cost, and all these things that we know but aren't really familiar with. And then the kids had to do a wood block about it, describe it in their own words, come up with several examples from their own life, and that was published. In fact, by the way, I have to tell you that there's somebody that we know was talking to Bill Clinton by phone, and he said that, I just was talking to Bill Clinton, and that book you gave me that the kids did, Bill said that he's really getting into microeconomics, and I told him I just read a book which helped me understand it better than anything I ever read before. And he said, really, who wrote it? He said, some 10th graders in a school that I know called High Tech High. He said, could you send me a copy for Bill? So I sent him a few copies, a little post-it that said, in case you know any other former presidents that want to brush up on their economics. Okay, public exhibitions are really important. We have thousands of people there. It makes it public. We don't tell the public to come, the kids do, their parents, grandparents, neighbors, uncles, aunts. It also brings a level of accountability to everything that we're doing. This was a great project that integrated physics, and we do, our walls are like, they're artifactoriums all over the place. Again, our design principles, I'm going to move very quickly in the interest of time. There's just been so much clever work, another great piece. Again, kids' voices. This whole thing about phi, and actually I have another slide that's out of consequence, another book that they did. This they picked poor Marty Feldman, because if you're doing phi and beauty, I guess they picked, well, they're teenagers. Marty didn't make it, all right? This was a great one about, we have so many kids, as we all do, just like Michelle's grandmother and mother and my grandmother, and we all came from other countries, and having kids write about that. This is one of my advisees, actually, whose dad passed when he was a 9th grader, and then he got very, very, very connected to a wonderful young 32-year-old teacher of ours who then passed himself a couple months later. It was a very challenging time for him, and he and this other boy they published this book that explains black holes to younger kids. Think about it, taking something as complicated as black holes and explaining it to younger kids. More. This is she's so great. I'm thinking about all these great teachers that we have that just do. It's such a great opportunity to be doing this type of work today. This is a teacher a recent UC Berkeley grad, and on a back hallway, I just noticed that he was working with seniors. Eric Erickson. The 8 stages of humans, adolescence is identity and industry. Who am I and what do I contribute to the world? And here he just put up infographic resumes. He had the kids do infographic resumes, which was brilliant. A brilliant idea. Something else, we do a lot of music. This is an infographic on Madagascar's environment, another infographic. Here's another kid's infographic. So what they book matched it, and they send like a traditional resume and then the same kid with an infographic. If you line those two up of an 18-year-old, it's dramatic how much more you get from an infographic. She, of course, is thinking about design. That's another lovely one. The mapping, all kinds of mapping in the city of the things that they want to map. They pick the topics, and it's a fascinating way to learn. I mean, if you want a great place to begin is right where the student is, and that's where they learn. I mean, I'm sure the same is true of Robert and Melissa. I know so many students who've never been to the beach, and I live in San Diego, right? It's extraordinary. Then this is interesting, making a tensegrity chair. There's so much art and so much math that goes into making a chair. And so the kids all had to make different chairs. Here's another example of a cool project right outside my office as it happens. This is funny because this art teacher that we have, who's a lovable nutcase, he came in my office one day and said, oh, you got to go on eBay right now because you have to buy something. I said, what? He said, a cigarette machine. I said, what? He said, a cigarette machine. I said, huh? He said, hurry up. So I got it. Yeah. So we get this cigarette machine, mid-century from Tennessee for $200. I had no idea why. And then, of course, found out, and then weeks later at the front entrance of the school, there's a cigarette machine, and it sells student art. And they reconfigured the side of it that you can't see in engineering, so you can pay different ways. And so I call it paradox therapy. When visitors come in, you don't see a cigarette machine anywhere, and you certainly don't see when you walk into a school, and you see them looking and go, huh? And then they look at it and they go, oh, cool, paradox therapy. That's the therapeutic part. That's our kids. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to do, I want to show a brief video that a young man made, and somebody here was the head of his school. And if I can say this, I think Calvin Brown said 2 words a month whether he needed to or not. Is that fair to say, Robert? Okay. And you know, we've all been in schools and we've all had students who are very, very quiet and you don't hear from them, and then all of a sudden they produce something, and what was going on in there is so remarkable. So I won't give the specifics, but he had some things happen in childhood that none of us should ever want to happen to anybody in childhood. I will say that. And I want to show a 2-minute video that he created all by himself, and then I'm going to tell you the consequence of that video. I was principal of the oldest high school in the United States, in Boston, and I was also principal of the oldest technical high school in the United States, and now have helped start the youngest high schools in the United States. And it's one of the things I've learned from the Gap is it's not just what you put in, it's what you don't allow in. So a real benefit I had from being in a 360-year-old school is that every time someone did something stupid, including me, they made another rule and never took rules away. So we have 2 rules. One of them is no roller skating in the hallways, and the other one is you may not seek press. So any attention that we've gotten has not been because we sought it, but only because we received it. And also in terms of this question about rule, you know, Voltaire said suspicion invites treachery, and I think that's absolutely true. And Erich Fromm said with freedom comes responsibility, and when people come to our schools, they're really struck by the behavior, how easy it is to have no rules and have everybody do it, just really behave in a very responsible way. Are we going to be able to see the video or not? 1 minute? As in 60 seconds, 1 minute, or 5 seconds? Oh, 60 seconds, okay. That gives me a chance to talk. I'm not supposed to take questions, but I always love to go back and forth. Okay, so Proposition 209 in California, which I do not agree with, but I realized some time ago I don't get to make all the decisions in the world, forbids the use of race or ethnicity for selecting anybody for any public institution. It was a really unfortunate thing to happen. Are we good? Okay. Calvin Brown.
What should students learn in the 21st century? At first glance, this question divides into 2. What should students know, and what should they be able to do? But there's more at issue than knowledge and skills. For the innovation economy, dispositions come into play. Readiness to collaborate, attention to multiple perspectives, initiative, persistence, and curiosity. While the content of any learning experience is important, the particular content is irrelevant. What really matters is how students react to it, shape it, or apply it. The purpose of learning in this century is not simply to recite inert knowledge, but rather to transform it. It is time to change the subject. This is no small matter. For more than a century, the whole point of schooling has been to restrict the curriculum, specify the required content, and limit the entry points to it, often by means of a watered-down, already obsolete text, mediated by a classroom manager whose task is to transmit the subject matter to 30 or more individuals of diverse backgrounds, experiences, interests, and resources. This is particularly true of the big four core subjects that the Carnegie Commission decided nearly a century ago are the subjects that matter. English, math, science, and social studies count for much, and the fine and practical arts for much less. Why not study anthropology, zoology, or environmental science? Why not integrate art with calculus or chemistry with history? Why not pick up skills and understandings in all of these areas by uncovering and addressing real problems and sharing findings with authentic audiences? Why not invent a useful product that uses electricity or devise solutions to community problems, all the while engaging in systematic observation, collaborative design, and public exhibitions of learning? It has long been axiomatic to separate students according to perceived academic ability, to separate academic from technical teaching and learning, and to isolate adolescents from the adult world they are about to enter. Instead, our aim in this century should be to integrate students by eliminating tracking, to integrate the subjects via problem-focused experiences, and to integrate school with the world beyond through fieldwork, service learning, and internships. What might students do in such schools in the absence of prescribed subjects? They might work together in diverse teams to build robots, roller coasters, gardens, and human-powered submarines. They might write and publish a guide to the fauna and history of a nearby estuary, or an economics text illustrated with original woodcuts, or a children's astronomy book. They might produce original films, plays, and spoken word events on adolescent issues, Japanese internment, cross-border experiences, and a host of other topics. They might mount a crime scene exhibition linking art history and DNA analysis, or develop a museum exhibit of World War I as seen from various perspectives. They might celebrate returning warriors, emulating the Bard and Beowulf by interviewing local veterans and writing poems honoring their experiences. The possibilities are endless. In executing such projects, students develop deep understandings by making something new of their subject matter. Of necessity, they learn how to collaborate, how to plan, how to give and accept critique, how to revise, how to self-assess. They read complex texts and write a wide range of pieces for a variety of purposes, from personal reflections to news articles, project proposals, memos, research reports, stories, and essays. They interview community members, learn to listen and appreciate diverse perspectives. As they present their work to important audiences, they come to understand what it means to be a member of the human community. And the irony is that as students pursue their passions and interests, the curriculum springs back to life. If we are to change the subject in this way, then we must change the trappings within which we educate our youth. It's a fool's errand to expect teachers to model 21st century skills in a 19th century work environment. Instead, situate them where they can collaborate with other teachers and with their students to pose problems, engage expert assistance, and design products and performances of lasting value. Embrace a cohort model where teams of teachers and students work together. Build professional collaboration and development time into the daily schedule so that teachers can meet variously in teaching teams, academic departments, and study groups to reflect on and refine their day-to-day practice. The aim is to unleash teachers and their students to design learning experiences that are applied, integrated, situated, expeditionary, and alternatively assessed. When we learn, really learn, we transform the content, the self, and the social relations of teaching and learning. This is what it means to change the subject. We can do this. If we value our future, we must.
There are two MOOCs at High Tech High. Here we go into MOOCdom. It's just, to me, I'm a stranger in a strange land. But that is my MOOC that I'm doing with Cal Berkeley. High Tech High is its own graduate school of education. That's a whole other story. We and Berkeley are doing one MOOC, which begins in January. So it's hthmoocs.org if anyone's interested. The other MOOC is a deeper learning MOOC that High Tech High is doing with the Media Lab at MIT. Okay? Oh, and my last thing, since given that my longtime friend Michelle just said what she said, I have to say something about my grandmother, because my grandmother was right way back when I was little. She came over from Eastern Europe, like a lot of people did. In 1911, she was 4 feet 10. She was the first female taxi medallion owner in New York City, literally sat on a phone book. And Calvin is proof, and others are proof of what she once said to me one day. She said, Larry, there are two kinds of people in this world. Those who think there's two kinds of people, and those who don't. Thank you.